Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us to this webinar, which is all about chargebacks. How can you prevent, reduce and reclaim this potential lost revenue? Welcome. My name is Jane Pendlebury. I'm the CEO of HOSPA, the Hospitality Professionals Association. It's 2 p.m. It's Tuesday, the 25th of March, 2025, and just over 3 weeks until Easter. We're due to be chatting for around 30 to 40 minutes today with time for questions at the end. So please do ask questions throughout using the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. If there's not enough time to answer the queries, then we will get back to you afterwards. I'm delighted to be joined by Ian Murray from Prompt and Connor Hobbs from Chargebacks 911. Would you like to quickly introduce yourselves and your company, please, Ian? Should we start with you?
Yeah, no problem at all. Hi, everyone. Great to meet you and thanks for joining. My name's Ian Murray and I'm the VP of Client Growth at Prompt. And Prompt have been around since 2017 and rooted in hospitality, where we've helped hotels convert all of their customer non-present unsecured transactions over to a secure custom branded custom message pay by link that offers a full integrated end-to-end integration to PMSs like Opera and Opera Cloud and V5. So yeah, looking forward to talking to you about chargebacks. We work in lots of verticals, but we start with hospitality, and where you start, your core product and your knowledge base and where you're kind of passionate about as a company remain. So yeah, looking forward to telling you a few stories from our side and hearing from you as well.
Brilliant. And Connor, would you like to unmute yourself and do the same?
Absolutely. So pleasure to meet everybody. My name is Connor Hobbs, as Jane mentioned, VP of Business Development here at Chargebacks and FI 911. I've worked for the company for, I would say, 7 years now, and prior to that, I worked for a large UK issuer. Throughout the whole process of my career, I've been working in the chargebacks and fraud space, supporting financial institutions, merchants, and building partnerships with people around the world as to supporting people in recovering money for chargebacks, preventing chargebacks, and overall just trying to change and disrupt the industry and um, the understanding of chargebacks that's been probably abused by some and utilized by many around the world.
Brilliant. Thank you both. That was both very clear and concise. So should we just set the scene and explain what the scale and the cost of the problem is within the hospitality industry with chargebacks? I don't know who wants to start that one. Ian, do you want to go first?
Sure, no problem. So I guess when you come to the scale and the kind of hospitality as a sector compared to other sectors, chargebacks we found to be more prevalent and more regular in that industry because of the nature of the business and the number of customer non-present transactions you take as a business. So I'm staying in a hotel. I'm not going to fly over to the hotel, book it in person, come back and then go over to the hotel. The vast majority of your payments, whether you're staying in a hotel, whether you're meeting an event, you're making it remotely. So through a website, through booking.com, over the phone, a virtual card. And because you're taking a lot more customer non-present transactions, there's a higher level of potential ambiguity and risk and fraud associated to it. So if your hotel that lean kind of more so on taking them over the phone and putting card data, it may seem like the quicker option. But if you don't have a kind of systems in place where you have a custom branded, custom message payment journey that tells the customer every step of the journey, makes them aware of your terms and conditions, cancellation policies before they even pay with you, you're leaving yourself very much open to, like Connor said, kind of chancing their arm with a chargeback, or the other end where you're not providing a secure and 3D secure process and a PCI level 1 compliant payment experience, where you get chargebacks for valid reasons and frauds where you don't have a leg to stand on. So it's a lot more prevalent in hospitality for that reason. People are paying remotely because they want to come visit your site. And in terms of the costs, with hospitality, there's the obvious costs like every business kind of experiences. So I have to pay. I always have to return the money if it's valid. I have to pay my merchant service provider for the fee to process it. But then there's that additional cost of the actual room. So and it's a no-show kind of scenario. So if lots of chargeback come from no-shows, it means someone cancelled last minute. They're not staying in that room. I didn't have the communication, the terms and conditions, and the journey in place to properly defend it, or even have the ability to collate the information. Number one means I'm paying that money. Number two means, and regardless of what season it is, high season, I have a high rate that I'm missing out on for a week from a customer who cancelled, or even my quiet season where I really need those rooms and bodies in those rooms where at all possible, they're not there. So they'd be the kind of areas and the kind of that will kind of come up with chargebacks and why it's kind of more prevalent in your industry and can have higher costs.
Yes, so obviously the obvious costs and then the hidden costs or not so hidden behind those as well. Connor, did you want to add anything to that one?
I think Ian covered a lot of it really well. I kind of summarize the scale and cost of chargebacks to any business in any vertical under the three R's, and that's revenue, risk, and reputation. Ian touched really nicely on the revenue side of things. There are so many hidden impacts to any kind of a merchant, whether it be in the hotel space or any space. And it could be the fact of things that people don't think about, and that is the cost of the room, the cost of taking that off the market, that somebody such as myself could have taken that hotel room for the night. The risk is obviously there's the revenue risk to one side. Again, what consumers as cardholders they don't know is every single merchant and every payment service provider is held to a threshold, that threshold being a certain percentage of your transactions turning into chargebacks. And if you breach certain thresholds as a merchant, there are fines, there are fees, and there's the possibility of having your account shut down. So there's a need for solutions that can help prevent chargebacks that we'll touch on a bit later. And then obviously reputational, like I mentioned. So if we come to a scenario where a group or a ring of customers learn that particular merchants aren't defending their chargebacks, then what it's going to do is it's the way that social groups work today. I'm going to tell my friends I stayed at X hotel and I got a chargeback and I got my money back. And this kind of perpetuates the idea that customers can get away with what I consider buyer liar or a buyer's remorse, where I stayed there the night and I got my money back at the same time. I've double enriched myself essentially. So they're the three main R's for any merchants, but particularly in the hospitality industry, because there is so much of a cost to the merchant, to the hotelier up front, because they're putting this room off the market for that particular cardholder.
Brilliant, thank you. And you mentioned other industries there. So we I suppose most of us and probably everyone on this webinar is aware that it's a problem within hospitality, but how do we compare with other industries? What's our chargeback rate like compared to other industry? Connor, I think you're probably best placed to go for that one.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, typically, if you were to look at 5, 6 years ago, hotels and airlines and the hospitality space as a whole was typically lower than average. And that's just because it was chargeback procedures and the chargeback rights weren't as widely understood and widely known. Since COVID, I would say at least, there's been a much higher push for chargebacks education to the end consumer. People are more aware of what protection they have on a card, and from that comes abuse. From that comes misunderstanding. So what I've seen recently in the past 5, 6 years is a steady increase in the amount of chargebacks that are being raised in the industry. And again, it brings me back to one of the R's in terms of a risk. Typically, hotels have a lower than average transaction volume amount, just because there's only a set amount of rooms that they can have that they are essentially renting out for the day. Whereas online merchants, e-commerce stores, they have a constant flow of transactions because they're selling tangible products, something that they can get from their fulfillment center and could just continuously send out. So that impacts the ratio of transactions that or the ratio of chargebacks, because there's less transactions but there's a similar amount of chargebacks. So there's more risk nowadays for hoteliers in the hospitality industry, from what I see on the chargeback side at least.
Ian, do you feel the same that hospitality compared to other industries?
Yeah, 100%. It's a much higher rate. And kind of Connor touched very nicely on some of the main points. But one other point to realize as well is that hospitality, it's so I'm a retailer, I'm sending items out. That's the item. It works, it doesn't work. There's a clear line of Does it work? Does it work? Does it justify a chargeback? Does it justify a refund? Hospitality, you are selling experience. It's based on a service you're providing. And, whether it's someone who's saved up to stay with their family, staying with friends, with a busy job, whether it's someone traveling with work, where you're away from your family, you're traveling with work, you're expecting a level of service and quality that comes with that hotel. And again, high level of card on present. If you're taking stuff over the phone, it's ambiguous, it's quick. But if someone doesn't have set expectations of what to expect at the hotel and what's expected of them, and it makes it very open in terms of their interpretation of justifying a chargeback, and also kind of, even if they don't mean to. And again, if a hotel doesn't have these processes in place where it's a clear terms and conditions, click on this, this is the experience, this is the communication, this is what to expect, you're going to get lots more chargebacks. Along with that, where you have a higher number of customer on present, but also a higher average kind of transaction size, you're going to get more chargebacks. So, where it comes to some businesses, you'll say, let's say, for example, I'm a jeweler. If someone's buying something that's not quite expensive, they might take it over the phone. If someone's buying a big two Rolexes, they're going to say, come in and let's meet you face to face and see what's going on here. With hotels, there's no kind of ratio and kind of delineation because it's all customer on present. So there's a clear kind of, and as a customer if they pay more, they're going to be tempted more and more, if they think they can get away with it, to apply a chargeback, because the reward is high and the risk is low if the hotel haven't applied the correct communication and procedures. And again, for an example, compared to, if I did my shopping and if one or two items weren't great, I'm not going to ring my bank, and say the onions were a bit crusty, you know what I mean? As opposed to a hotel, it was unambiguous, and I think I can get away with it, and it was like a grand or something. Why wouldn't someone chance their arm if they're like that anyway?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what are the general reasons for chargebacks to occur?
It's an
Whoever.
interesting question, and it's a subjective one because it comes down to realistically an individual's reason to raise a chargeback. What we'll typically see, there are cases of genuine chargebacks where there could be something wrong with the room, right? There could be an error with processing. There could be a duplication of the payment that goes through. These are true, genuine chargebacks, and they are what the chargebacks program is to be utilized for. So we'll take them aside for 1 second. We have other scenarios of final audit charges. Someone may have used the minibar, forgot about it, or they expected that it was part of the package, but it realistically wasn't. And they deem or they feel as if this was unauthorized. There could be scenarios of friendly fraud, which is probably the most common one. Friendly fraud being where, like I mentioned, somebody is trying to get something for nothing. They are attempting to double enrich themselves. And then there's some real strange chargebacks, again, where people are confused as to what their rights are. And I think I shared quite an anecdotal story with you previously, Ian, where I have some clients in the hotel industry where they were getting chargebacks that were coming through as not as described. So they're stating that what they ordered wasn't what they received. And it all stemmed down to they were staying at a beach as part of their spring break, and there was seaweed on the beach, and it didn't match the sandy, glorious photos, Jane, of what they had initially bought on the website. And to be honest, that is a quality of service chargeback. So it's something that realistically is out of the hotelier's control. It's realistically out of anyone's control. But it's not true grounds for a chargeback. They still received the service that they were promised, in which case it should be an easy chargeback to overturn. But Ian mentioned it. There's how risky is it for a consumer or a cardholder to raise a chargeback? I must say, in this particular vertical, in this particular industry, in hotels and hospitality, it's very low risk because there isn't a framework, or there isn't like a group of people or employees at a hotel that are trained on defending chargebacks, are trained on what procedures and solutions are out there in the market that can support them. So typically what you see is consumers are raising chargebacks and they're getting away with it every single time because no one's there to hold them accountable for the transactions they make.
Awful. Go on
Yeah,
in.
and I think as well as that, it's kind of, I guess sometimes it's the business itself thinking they might be choosing the path of least resistance when it comes to customer non-present transactions, but long term it actually becomes the path of
Yeah.
ultimate resistance and ultimate cost. So you have, let's take everything over the phone. It's non-secure. If fraud happens, you have to take it on the chin. Um, Friendly fraud comes into place more if you're doing that more. The customer didn't remember the payment. There's no receipt sent to them. There's no custom messaging or audit trail. There's no treaty secure, so someone else could pay using their card, a family member that they didn't agree with. But if it was treaty secure, the actual card owner will be asked to approve it. Manual error comes into it a lot as well. So I'm a hotel and I'm focused on the people on site. There's a million things going on. Any type of hotel, people expect a quality of service because they've paid to stay at your property. I'm dealing with those people. There's loads of stuff coming in, and I'm typing in card data, but I'm also typing in amounts into a virtual terminals. And it's, if a hotel applies this as opposed to having, an integrated kind of a pay by link where their payment request gets sent out from Opera when a certain rate code comes in, or they just click a button, it all gets handled, but all that communication security happens. They're going to get it more and more because people are just people. You're under pressure and you're going to have a few errors. And then it's just, again, like we keep saying, there's just more and more, room for ambiguity. It didn't meet what I wanted. I thought this was included. You didn't make it clear. It's just going to come into it every time, and it seems like it's adding a lot, but small things like terms and conditions and a custom
Yeah.
branded template really just make your kind of protection iron tight in these scenarios. And it just means, I don't want to spend half an hour worrying about one person out of 100 when sending a payment request, or thinking about people I'm sending requests out or getting that payment in. I want a kind of solution in place that will defend me at the beginning, but even if a chargeback comes, back me up if it even comes regardless, so I can just make this get a system in place where it all happens as quickly as possible. So I know I'm covered and I can just cover the people on site, which is the priority at that time.
Yeah, and it's kind of acknowledgement of those terms and conditions as well, isn't it, really? And it's all well and good putting this in front of someone and expecting them to read it and kind of understand it, but it's those specific tick boxes. I have acknowledged that I've read these, and it's those kind of things that really some people say it's friction, and I know we spoke about this previously. Again, it's there must be an equilibrium in there somewhere in terms of how much friction and security a merchant has, and I believe that Prompt have kind of not capitalized, but they've found that equilibrium. They've found that sweet spot effectively.
Yeah, like it's easy things like it's easy to click at terms and conditions. It's having a checkout that pulls in the originating email and the amount that's reflective. So look, you saw how much it is, you saw who it's from. It's merchant initiated transactions. You're paying for something and someone just charges your card for a remainder coming up to that date, as opposed to having a system in place that applies this charge securely instead of just a pure MI merchant initiated transaction where you get a receipt with a full audit trail and saying we approved it because you said yes and it was treaty secure. So it's just, yeah, it sounds like it's a lot, but the payments industry kind of chargeback 911 and how they defend it, it's been around a long time. So the rails are set up to make it seamless if you spend in time. It's not to be cheesy, but it's like renewables, you kind of it's the biggest challenge is thinking about doing it and kind of implementing it. But then when it's
Yeah,
done, it's just you don't think about it again. It works well.
yeah.
So having terms and conditions in place is clearly one big thing for every hotel to put in place. But what are the practical strategies other than that, or alongside that, that a hotel can employ to prevent chargebacks?
I think I think hotels and the hospitality industry as a whole are very much in a unique position where if we was talking about just me purchasing something online, say from Tesco's, for example, right? It's one of these scenarios where I just input my card details, my billing information, and potentially a delivery, and then it's done. Everything. It may go through 3DS, it may not. With hotels in the hospitality industry, you're in a unique position because there is a lot more data that you do collect. When I check into the hotel, I'm handing over a form of ID, I'm having a card on file, anything along those lines. So for that initial transaction, there's the same amount of data collection, but when the fulfillment of the service is actually coming to pass, there's a lot more data being collected, and that's a really good thing, right? Hoteliers and anyone in this particular vertical are in that unique position where they have more than a lot of people, and being able to utilize this data is what's key. And I mean, Chargebacks 911, we have been in the industry for well over a decade now in supporting anyone on the planet when it comes to chargebacks, from financial institutions down to hotels. And it's understanding the rules and regulations from the card schemes themselves as to what is considered compelling evidence, and being able to format and formulate it into a rebuttal document that will then get sent over to the acquirer and overturn the chargeback. That's kind of the revenue recovery side of it. Having a solution that can prevent chargebacks, whether it be through a data exchange, so kind of like a request for information, clarification while they're on the phone to the customer, or whether it be through some form of reconciliation prior to a chargeback going through. These solutions are key in protecting the business, protecting the revenue, and protecting the reputation of any merchant worldwide. And they're very easy to implement. And that's from a chargebacks number one perspective. But I mean, there are several other things such as tick boxes on T's and C's, changing the way that you may collect payments, as opposed to, like Ian said, the evolution of moving away from taking orders over the phone and just say, here's a payment link. Because again, you have audit trails, um, you have an articulated flow as to when the customer had a conversation, when they made a payment, what data was collected, and it's having that that can then be utilized in a chargeback to have it overturned.
Ian, do you want to talk more about
Yeah,
what?
I mean, no problem. I mean, there's kind of, for me, there's like two parts to kind of your strategies for chargebacks, and one is the initial part of how you set up your infrastructure and customer non-present infrastructure to kind of prevent a lot of them. So that's convert your payments from non-secure to 3D secure. Get a supplier that's PCI level 1 compliant, so you're meeting all regulation. Be clear. That's the first part. Be clear and informative in terms of the customer's journey, what they should expect and what you expect as a merchant when they pay with you and what they need to sign off on. And the third one is to have the above two as an automated as you can. Have it integrated to your PMS. Update your PMS afterwards. Chargebacks, so that'll get rid of a lot of it, but chargebacks will still happen. Like, it is just the nature of the business. So you can say that, but they will still apply. And it's having, and through partners like, partner of ours like Chargebacks 911 is where it really comes into play, where you have fast access to the data you need to get to start building up a case. So small things like being able to see the number, actually the emails were delivered to the correct email address, terms and conditions were clicked, they were brought through the journey, they clicked on the link. Being able to kind of confirm the gateway messaging, seeing that 3D Secure was applied, and then having that open communication between the different data sources, whether it's your payment communication provider, your merchant service provider, and the kind of vendor that you use to help protect your chargebacks, to be able to formulate and come up with your chargeback response in a quick and easy time, where it's not something that, 10 people from a room who should be doing something else are talking about it, and it just creates a big stressful and time wasting exercise, where it can be easily addressed if you have the correct data points in place that are easily accessible. And like Connor said, hospitality is unique in terms of the amount of data that you do have access, in terms of what the customer has reviewed and seen, what they've agreed to, and the level of security they had to apply and you've applied to make sure that you're protecting yourselves and themselves.
Great. Okay, so you can put lots of things in place to minimize, but whatever you do, you're saying it's not preventable. They will still happen. So assuming there's someone there in an accounts office today who receives a chargeback notification, what steps should that person go through? What should their first reaction be, and what should they do to try and solve the issue? Connor.
Sorry, I had an unstable connection there for a second, Jane. Do you want to just repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, no, sure, of course. I was saying that you can put all these preventions in place, but that they will still come through, the chargebacks, however cautious you've been, or preventative measures you've put in. Once the accounts office receive a chargeback notification, what should their first thing be? What should they do first and thereafter?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, upon receipt of a chargeback notification, the first thing that you always want to be doing is understanding the reason that the chargeback was raised. And there's a reason code with every single chargeback, and they can vary from, like I mentioned, service not rendered. It can be unauthorized transaction, fraudulent. It can be not as described. all of these scenarios, and understanding what the particular reason code is will determine what pieces of compelling evidence are required to essentially have that chargeback overturned in favor of the merchant. So that's kind of stage one. Stage two is understanding what data you have collected. So, for example, like I said, there's authorization information, there's card details that are collected. Did you collect ID upon check-in? And does that match the actual customer that is attempting or actually made the purchase? And that can combat fraud. Then you need to be speaking to your customers potentially. Maybe you want to speak to a customer and say, particularly what was the problem that you had? Was it a problem with the service? Was it a problem that you had seaweed on the beach? Was the sand not up to par? And it's understanding this that should drive your decision into making the required defense package to have that overturned. I think another step that hotels should always looking at is, should we be looking at using a partner such as Chargebacks 911 to support in recovering all of those chargebacks? Oh, I think I've frozen for a second there. Oh, we're back. So yeah, should we be utilizing a partner like Chargebacks 911 so that I don't have to worry about it anymore? They will be in receipt of all of the chargebacks. They will collect all of the relevant information themselves. They will build the rebuttal and they will send it off. They will even collect the verdicts for me. And chargebacks are ever changing, and the schemes themselves, the card networks, they're ever changing the rules. This is an industry, payments is an industry that evolves on a daily basis. Payment methods evolve, and the rules need to evolve with it. And therefore, the required information that is needed to have a chargeback overturned, that evolves as well. So it's making sure that you're always in the loop of the industry, of chargebacks as a whole, and utilizing everything as a holistic approach to combating and winning chargebacks.
Okay, that's a very comprehensive answer. Thank you. So I have got a couple of live questions, but before we dive into those, I just think we should finish off our first bit and just summarize the key takeaways for the hotels that are listening in today in terms of prevention and defense. What are the key things for them to scribble down on their notepad right now?
Yeah. So for me, there's kind of four key points kind of in what we do, and kind of similar to what Connor said, when you're a business taking lots of customer on-present transactions and that's the nature of your business, it's important to be partnered with vendors that specialize in these areas. So Chargeback 911 specialize in recovering and getting the highest success rate in chargebacks. We specialize in your customer on-present transactions, making sure they're as secure, as branded, as easy to use as possible, and it's custom integrated to your PMS Opera to make it a kind of a quick, seamless journey that has no real ability for any error at any stage. For me, and what we say to our customers is there are four things. So, and we kind of said it at the start, is you need to move, if you have unsecure payments that you're taking over the phone, you need to move them to a secure method of payment where they're paying remotely. So a secure, 3D secure pay by link, where that customer has to prove they're the card holder and it's PCI level 1 compliant, which protects yourselves and their own data. The second point is to make it a custom branded journey that's custom messaged and has all the points in place which are easy to implement and easy for the customer to go through that protect you from getting that charge back in the first place. So a custom branded email, having your own custom branded messaging, hero imagery, color the button, brought to their website, they click your terms and conditions, they get a receipt, they're aware of when they're coming, so that there's no ambiguity when the payment is made. The third point is that it is an automated, quick and easy journey. So through our integration or our web app, it's either 0 clicks or 2 clicks in the booking. Everything's initiated and it updates your system automatically. So all that custom messaging, all that enhanced journey is brought from 2 clicks, and there's no inputting data where you're trying to do other jobs, which is what you need to do because it's dealing with customers in front of you. And then the last point is to have in place those points of data to start the journey. So I need to see that the exact timestamp the payment requests were sent and actually delivered. I need to see that the number of times they've opened the email, clicked on the link, that they clicked the terms and conditions. I need to access quickly my gateway message, making sure that they pass 3D secure, and have all these points of reference in place so that you know that chargeback is defendable, and you can then move on to that phase two, where we would cover that in where this would be Prompt side of the journey, where we cover all that part. And if it phase two and where someone still initiates a chargeback, you have all these points where you need the kind of expertise in chargebacks 911. So that'll be what we do, and the kind of key points that I think hotels should take away from the session from me.
And Connor, have you
Absolutely.
got a little summary like that as well for us?
Yeah, I mean, very similar to what Ian said. Just to touch on the having a solution provider like Chargebacks number one is very important. And with a partner like Prompt, we we know that all of the information that we need to win a chargeback is going to be collected. So it's kind of you've done one stage of everything. Now go that next step further and ensuring that we're in receipt of that data and we're working on your behalf to net the best win rate and recover those chargebacks. And alongside that, having that access or having that data readily available for us to utilize means that prior to a chargeback coming through, we can be through our own connections with the schemes, we can be able to push this information before a chargeback's raised. So we can essentially, while the customer is on the phone to the bank, we can have that information populated that, okay, this transaction was for a no-show. Right. So, and you've clearly articulated that you've accepted the terms and conditions. Here's the tick boxes. Here's how you made the payment. Unfortunately, me as an issuer, I'm not going to raise your chargeback because I've already got all of the information here that says otherwise. So it's kind of using the support functions that are out there to prevent and also recover.
Right, brilliant. I've got a question. I think actually you've pretty much just answered it, but it came in a little bit before you started. It's from Gary. I've noticed that the majority of our reservations charged with no-show fees are being disputed and lost, even though it was charged 3D secure and provided clear terms and conditions. Could you please advise on what else might be missing to defend these charges effectively? So you have pretty much answered that, but I don't know if you just want to give a 2-second answer to that one.
Yeah, so I think you said it was Gary. So for you, Gary, with providing information that it was charged by 3D Secure on an e-commerce transaction, what you're essentially doing is you're proving that this transaction was not fraud. What it comes down to again is understanding what the reason code is. So it could be that it was not as described, or there could be something different. So that's the core part of everything, is understanding whether providing 3D Secure information is even needed to win that case. And the second part of it is making sure that there is acknowledgement that they are reading and confirming that they are accepting the terms and conditions, and articulating this in your rebuttal document that you send back to your payment provider or acquirer should lead to a much better result. And it's ever changing, so you need to make sure that you're well aware of what is needed, and unfortunately that information isn't readily available. So utilizing someone like Chargebacks number one would be of benefit to you in increasing your win rates.
Cool. And this next query is about using zero authentication to validate the card during the booking and tokenizing the card, and then charging the card once the guest checks in, checks out, or in the case of a no-show. So in that instance where they've done the zero authentication at the beginning, would the liability still fall back on the merchant if the customer raises a chargeback? I assume the answer is yes to that.
Yeah, it's similar. So when it's merchant initiated transactions, a lot of hotels, it's a big part of what they do. And like I said previously, they just charge your card coming up to the date, but your card is just charged, you see it in your bank statement. I guess the thing to take away is you will never, like, you can never confidently say chargebacks will be fully eradicated from your payment experience. It's about making your chargebacks as defendable and as iron tight, and to have an audit log start to finish. And what Connor said, that you can easily show. So it's similar, let's say, you need to have, like, say, something like Prompt, where you needed them to tick a box. It clearly communicates this gives us permission to tokenize your card to take, to take further fees, and along with that, get them to click your terms and conditions, which gives more information on that. Then make them pass through 3D Secure. Then having a provider like ourselves in place that when you that when you can see on your payment logs that they've ticked all these boxes, they've gone through this journey. So then when you are handing it over to someone like Chargebacks 911, where they're looking at it, you have all these data points in place. And again, like, people, and look, if people could, if someone comes to you and says, if any payment provider says, we'll get rid of all your chargebacks, there's never, they're always going to happen. That's never going to happen. It's about being comfortable with having a large proportion of your business and having be able to do merchant initiated transactions, customer non-present transactions, but know that they're all defendable and you're taking the best method to defend them. And you could have options like Chargebacks 911 to take it further if you need to have it.
I must say, there is a solution to getting zero chargebacks, Ian, and that is take zero transactions. And that's the only solution, right?
Yeah, my eyes opened and I was like, what?
It's a silver bullet. No, no.
Okay, so another question here. I'd like to know what systems or tools do we use to document our success rates? For example, win versus loss chargeback cases and amounts, say monthly, quarterly, or annually. Is there an example when a startup is managing their financial bit internally for them to monitor that? I guess
It's
that's
an interesting question. The data is contained from your payment provider, so your processor or your acquirer. They're the ones that are notifying you of a chargeback. If you may be using an orchestration platform or anything along those lines, right? Whoever is notifying you of receipt of a chargeback, they're the ones that are going to tell you what's won, what's lost, how much revenue's been lost, what your ratios are, and stuff like that. Now, when we take a merchant live, we provide all of these services in a single instance that they're provided, just so there's a one-stop shop for everything that they've got chargebacks related. And in there is information and data analytics and intelligence that can tell them ways to improve their business practice. And again, a lot of this data will come from the partnership with Prompt. So there's non-stop notifications that can inform you of what improvements you can make to reduce those vulnerabilities organically. Whilst housing all of that information, such as wins and losses. But if you're looking for it today, I would speak to whoever it is that notifies you of your chargebacks and you send those responses back to Defend. They're the ones that are going to have access to all of that data. And you may have it in a platform, or you may need to request custom reports on what you're looking for.
perfect. And there's a comment here about friendly fraud. They haven't met any friendly fraudsters yet. But I think the last question we have live is about repeat offenders. So if there are people who are just scamming time and time again, are they highlighted by the bank? Does the bank pick up on those, or do they just go straight back to the merchant and just it's an automated process and doesn't do the other bit at the other end?
It's an
Yes.
interesting one again. It really is. Ian, sorry. Do you want to go
No,
ahead?
no. I'll just say for again repeat offenders, it's important to have a close and close follow-ups with your merchant service provider because they'll have the capability. So what you want is you want your customer non-presence system to have, similar to what Connor said, dashboards functionality to kind of track what's going on and where it can highlight success rates. Also, you want your customer non-presence payment solution to be able to kind of run reports, identify repeat offenders, pull in data like let's say you could go into Prompt and say, and you can initially go into it and you can go into a payment and you can see how many times this customer attempted to pay. And then you can look into the payment logs and say, right, this person tried to pay 20 times. You know what I mean? Within the space, I want to contact my merchant service provider and disable that card or disabled whatever email. Having the kind of email addresses and communication you can pull that don't look great. So, kind of 20 smiley faces before an at symbol and stuff like that, and pulling that granular data. It's having access this data quickly, and then having from your merchant service provider having a close link for them and someone like Prompt where they can talk to each other and communicate and disable stuff quickly. And then obviously, Connor, I'll let you probably have a few things to add from your side too.
Yeah, I think repeat offenders, bad actors, whatever you want to call them, they are a growing problem, and there's no obligation for issuing groups to stop this, right? At the end of the day, the chargebacks program, the chargebacks framework as a whole is there to enable customers to actually use their cards. I would not feel confident using my card online if I didn't have any form of protection. So in a sense, chargebacks are great because without chargebacks, no one would use their cards and it would be much more difficult for all of us to do business. At the same time, then it comes down to abuse. And repeat offenders and bad actors, the problem is that nobody has the time, especially in the hospitality industry, hotel owners, they don't have the time to sit there and crawl through information as to, like Ian said, does this IP address match? Does this device ID match? Is this PAN number a non-unique instance that has raised 4 chargebacks in the past year? No one has time to do that anymore. And it's having a system that's intuitive enough to understand what is necessary and needed for those particular clients. And again, those notifications that we have in form of data intelligence will highlight IP addresses, email addresses, device ID, and card numbers that will say, Ian Murray has raised 4 chargebacks in the past 6 months. He may be a bad actor. You may want to cancel his booking reservations in the future, maybe blacklist that particular card number. And again, this kind of information gets fed back into your partners, such as Prompt, so that they can take that action on your behalf.
Okay, that sounds so. Never take a hotel booking from Ian Murray. Is that the advice?
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't.
Well, that does very neatly take us to our 40 minutes, actually. So I think we'll wrap it up there. I'd like to thank everyone for listening, and thank you, Ian and Connor, for really useful discussion. They're full of good, solid
problem.
advice. So thank you very much. And I'm sure the listeners will appreciate you sharing your expertise and stories as well. If anybody listening would like an introduction to Ian and or Connor, then please let me know and I'll be happy to connect you. And I always have to say, if you need any formal advice, then please do approach your professional advisor or come to me at Hosper for a referral. Most of the listeners today are from within finance, I would hope. So please can I draw your attention to our annual finance event that we're running in conjunction with BDO. We're hosting our ever popular breakfast event on Thursday, the 5th of June, our BDO's offices in Baker Street. So please do register if you can join us for that one. It really is an event not to be missed, not least because of the valuable content, but also the breakfast and for networking with fellow finance experts from within hospitality. So please take a look at hosper.org for that and for other upcoming events. And also within a few days, you'll find a recording of this webinar, along with all our other webinars and masterclasses, which are also hosted on our YouTube channel. This one should be up within the next few days. And there should be a blog about it too. So if you've got any colleagues that have missed it, you can introduce either the link or the blog. But thank you all for listening. And a big thank you again to both Ian and Connor. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.